Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel if you're new. Um, this evening I'm going to talk about Gene Kim because Gene Kim is really, really stupid. Um, he's not the only one, but the thing I have for you today, uh, if if you haven't seen any of these other retards, you're going to think he's right up there. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, yeah, you can see that. All right. So, so just the title of this is like the dumbest thing I have. Well, I can't say it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, but it's one of the dumbest. All right. He says, in case you can't see it, the title of this is Did You Know Hell Created the Dead Sea? Ugh. No, Gene. Hell didn't create the Dead Sea. The Mediterranean created the Dead Sea because the Dead Sea became, you know, landlocked from the Mediterranean. So, you really should have thought that one through. All right.
Exhausted her life. So it's very important. Now, I do want to say this. What I want to say is, it's actually, before you think God is too harsh.
Sorry about that. Let me mute. I didn't mean to press the thing and make it echo, so sorry about that. Let me mute and let's go back to it.
Them to get away from the city. If you look at verse, let's see right here, verse 17, he says, escape for thy life, look not behind thee. See that? God made it clear, don't look behind you, all right? God made it clear, don't look back, take up your cross and follow me, right? And then because that one turn exhausted her life.
Gina, I think you need to read that story again. That story doesn't say, don't look behind you, take up your cross and follow me. Nope, it just says, don't look behind you. And for those of you who don't know, he's talking about the story of Lot's wife when God sent some angels down to Sodom and Gomorrah to, quote unquote, see if the cities were evil enough to destroy. And I thought God was all knowing. Why didn't he know that the cities were evil enough to destroy? Anyway, moving on. Now, people like this dude think that God was mad because the people of the city were butt fucking. No. I mean, he may have been, but that's not the reason he destroyed the cities. He destroyed the cities because of them not being hospitable to strangers. Because in this day and age, not when Sodom and Gomorrah were actually inhabited, but when the story takes place, which is I can't remember whether it's before or after, But anyway, Sodom and Gomorrah were like a lot of old cities in that they were inhabited and then they were left and then they were inhabited again. So, but the Jews especially had this thing where strangers were supposed to be taken care of, and it it didn't matter. Strangers were supposed to be taken care of, and that's why the cities were destroyed. Um, it did not have anything to do with butt fucking. Um, so anyway, in fact, that's why Lot was spared. Lot offered his daughters instead, and that was considered hospitable to keep, the angels from being R worded. So, that's why Lot and his family were spared. And so the angels took Lot and his family and set them outside of the gates of the cities and said, "Don't look back." They didn't say what would happen if any of them did look back, which, I mean, come on. If you're going to punish somebody for something like that, especially the way that Lot's wife was punished. Oh, yeah, and that's another thing. Lot's wife isn't even um, special enough to have her name written down. It's just Lot's wife, right? Not that I believe this shit anyway, but at any rate, so Lot's wife turns around and she becomes a pillar of salt, according to the story. And Christians are okay with this. Christians are okay with this kind of just horribleness from their God. This isn't the first time that God's acted horribly, and it certainly isn't going to be the last time. Uh, at any rate, yeah, they don't have any problem with it, which is probably why they act so goddamn mean in this day and age. At least the fundies, like this guy is. All right, moving on.
Life. So it's very important. Now, I do want to say this. What I want to say is, it's actually, before you think God is too harsh, it's not because, to my understanding, God's striking her down like that, even though I said it that way. It's not that, oh, you disobeyed me, bam, like that. No, it's because his judgment is so severe against sin, he's warning them, look, don't look back, because
No, Gene, your own book separates sin from transgression. A transgression is not necessarily a quote unquote bad thing. It's just a violation of God's commandment, which ordinarily wouldn't be bad. Eve eating the fruit, that was a transgression, not a sin. Of course, I would say sin would be, arbitrary according to God's rules too. But anyway, moving on.
that's how bad the consequence of sin is. The consequence of sin is so bad that you shouldn't look behind. So it's not a matter of God striking the person down, it's a matter of the consequence of sin that strikes it down. The problem with people nowadays is
Don't make it seem more palatable. There is no fucking way in the world that would be more palatable to any compassionate person. Don't fucking go there. I don't even know how you can come to think like this.
If you are going, if you're reaping what you've sown, it's more so of not God chastising you, but more so of your sin. You have
Well, I mean, yeah, if you steal something, and you've been proven guilty in a court of law and you go to jail, yeah, that's a consequence of your stealing. That's just the way it is. Because we have to make sure people don't steal. On the other hand, that Lot's wife, looking back, didn't hurt God, didn't hurt anybody else. So why are we talking about this like it's a consequence of her action and not a fucked up God? Hmm?
to understand that. So we can't really blame God. It's a matter of you have to blame sin for that. So why do you play with sin? Why are you merciful with sin when it's going to strike you down like that? So we have to take.
Because there's no such thing as sin. There's such a thing as right and wrong. Goddamn right on that one. But no such thing as sin. Come on. You're supposed to be a doctor, for God's sake. Don't know what kind of a doctor doesn't know the difference, but, still you're supposed to be a doctor or something. Anyway, moving on.
Take that account seriously. We don't take sin seriously. So then she became a pillar of salt. So that's how she became a pillar of salt. Now let's go through 24, 25, 26, how this all ties to hell. Why is it that I teach that Sodom and Gomorrah got burned with hellfire? So I've explained a little bit of that at Genesis 4.
More than likely, they archaeologists think they found what was called Sodom and Gomorrah. They're not 100% on it because they never can be, but they think what happened, if the cities they identified are correctly the biblical Sodom and Gomorrah, they think what happened was it was an earthquake. But the fire from heaven could have been a meteorite too. And we're talking about stories from people who weren't there to see it. So that's another thing you have to watch out for.
So I'll expound it again right here. First of all, there is a question at verse 24. The Bible shows that it rained, right? So it rained fire and brimstone out of heaven, upon Sodom and Gomorrah. So, Pastor, for you to say that it came from hell doesn't make sense because it fell from God out of heaven. Well, you have to understand this. First of all, there are these signs that it is hell because if you look at verse 24, it says fire and brimstone, right? All right, what's fire and brimstone? Look at Revelation 21:8. Revelation 21:8.
As far as I know, and if I remember correctly, and don't quote me 100% on this. In fact, don't quote me at all on this. But if I remember correctly, and I might not, brimstone is actually the King James word for sulfur?
It's hell. Hell has fire and brimstone. So we're going to establish several cases on why Sodom and Gomorrah, when it was burned with fire and brimstone, or when it was burned with fire from the Lord, that this is referring to hell. So here are several.
You're just talking in circles, Kimmy boy. Seriously. Fire and brimstone comes from hell, so it was rained on by heaven. What? Dude, you need to take some language courses, number one, and number two, you need to, take some logicking courses because you do not do either one of them very well.
Cases to establish these arguments. So why is it hell? One, it's because of fire and brimstone. That's what the Bible called it, fire and brimstone.
Pretty sure there are other places, as in places on earth, that are fire and brimstone too, so that doesn't tell us anything.
Well, why did you say, what are you going to do with it coming out of heaven? Well, that's where number two comes in that people don't really take time to think about. People today, there's a lot of Christians who actually talk about today that the lava that we get from the volcano eruption from the core of the earth, that's where hell is. So think about it. When hell is referring to volcano activity, then think about it. Isn't it raining? It is raining. And that's where you can get the brimstone as well. I've given a teaching at Revelation where it could possibly refer to like some kind of stone of fire, but sulfur.
So, wait a minute. You actually think that hell is in the center of the earth? Actually, not even the center of the earth, because that wouldn't make any sense. Now, as far as we know, the center of the earth is iron, as far as we know. So you would be talking about the mantle. What the fuck?
Sulfur is also called stones of fire. It's more likely that's referring to sulfur, but I leave the interpretation open to some kind of stones of fire. Besides that, returning back to Genesis 19, the point is that all of this sulfur activity, lava activity, fire activity, brimstone activity, raining out from the sky, but coming from hell itself, volcano fits it very perfectly. So you notice that God, the people were thinking, we're doing so well in Hawaii. It exhausted her life. So it's very important.
Yeah, it is true. It could have come from a volcano, but it's also true that an eruption of a volcano can be set off by an earthquake. Moving on.
Important. Now, I do want to say this. What I want to say is, it's actually, before you think God is too harsh, it's not because, to my understanding, God's striking her down like that, even though I said it that way. It's not that, oh, you disobeyed me, bam, like that. No, it's because his judgment is so severe against sin, he's warning them, look, don't look back, because that's how bad the consequence of sin is. The consequence of sin is so bad that you shouldn't look behind. So it's not a matter of God striking the person down, it's a matter of the consequence of sin that strikes it down. The problem with people nowadays is, if you're reaping what you've sown, it's more so of not God chastising you, but more so of your sin.
No. What you people call sin, which doesn't exist, but what you people call sin is usually not bad. Okay? get that out of your fucking head and call it for what it is. Your God is a fucking sadomasochist. And I'm specifically talking about the Fundy Christian God. I'm not talking about any other God. All right, moving on.
To understand that. So we can't really blame God. It's a matter of you have to blame sin for that. So why do you play with sin? Why are you merciful with sin?
No, we can blame your God for that because if your book is right, he made all of this knowing that Adam and Eve were going to eat the fruit. That means he knew beforehand that they would fuck up. So, yes, it is your sadomasochistic God's fault. Any other questions? Probably. So let's move on.
When it's going to strike you down like that. So we have to take that account seriously. We don't take sin seriously. So then she became a pillar of salt. So that's how she became a pillar of salt. Now let's go through 24, 25, 26, how this all ties to hell. Why is it that I teach that Sodom and Gomorrah got burned with hellfire? So I've explained a little bit of that at Genesis 14. So I'll expound it again right here. First of all, there is a question at verse 24.
Gene, buddy, you don't expound anything. You just make up shit and hope that your sheeple don't notice.
The Bible shows that it rained, right? So it rained fire and brimstone out of Sodom, out of heaven, upon Sodom and Gomorrah. So, Pastor, for you to say that it came from hell doesn't make sense because it fell from God out of heaven. Well, you have to understand this. First of all, there are these signs that it is hell because if you look at verse 24, it says fire and brimstone, right? All right, what's fire and brimstone? Look at Revelation 21:8.
Wait a minute. Assuming the Sodom and Gomorrah thing ever happened, and it was fire and brimstone, you think that the only thing that it could have been was hellfire? Dude, please take a logic course. This makes no goddamn sense.
Revelation 21:8. It's hell. Hell has fire and brimstone. So we're going to establish several cases on why Sodom and Gomorrah, when it was burned with fire and brimstone, or when it was burned with fire from the Lord, that this is referring to hell. So here are several cases.
You don't know that. And you're using eisegesis to come to your predetermined conclusion, which it is a predetermined conclusion because you don't know what it is, except you just said it was a volcano, which it very well could have been a volcano, which in that case has a totally natural explanation for it and needs no supernatural explanation. So why the fuck are you going through this mental gymnastics?
To establish these arguments. So why is it hell? One, it's because of fire and brimstone. That's what the Bible called it, fire and brimstone. Well, why did you say, what are you going to do with it coming out of heaven? Well, that's where number two comes in that people don't really take time to think about. People today, there's a lot of Christians who actually talk about today that the lava that we get from the volcano eruption from the core of the earth, that's where hell is. So think about it. When hell is referring to
Oh my God. Now he thinks that the, as far as we know, iron core of the earth is made of fire and brimstone. Which, by the way, volcanoes don't even go down that far.
Volcano activity, then think about it. Isn't it raining? It is raining. And that's where you can get the brimstone as well. I've given a teaching at Revelation where it could possibly refer to like some kind of stone of fire, but sulfur is also called stones of fire. It's more likely that's referring to sulfur, but I leave the interpretation open to some kind of stones of fire. Besides that, returning back to Genesis 19, the point is that all of this sulfur activity
So you point out that sulfur is called stones of fire. Don't know where you get that from, but it's immaterial. But you leave that up for interpretation, even though you just said that sulfur is called stones of fire. And yet, for some reason, you think just because it mentions fire and brimstone in Genesis with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and it mentions fire and brimstone in Revelation as relates to hell, that they're connected. Dude, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Take a logic course. You just demolished your own argument. I know you don't know that, but that's what you did.
the lava activity, fire activity, brimstone activity, raining out from the sky, but coming from hell itself, volcano fits it very perfectly. So you notice that God, the people were thinking, we're doing so well in Hawaii over here, and we have a different party, different kind of belief and system, but it's just so pleasant out here, and then God just has to just do one of those little volcanoes.
Hawaii. You do know that Sodom and Gomorrah were most probably in the Middle East and nowhere near Hawaii. You do know that, right? Although maybe you don't. You probably don't. You probably don't know geography any more than you know logic. Moving on.
Okay, now look at Revelation 21, verse 8. But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. That is referred.
Well, Gene, if you really believe that, then you must believe that you're going to have your part in the lake of fire, because you've been lying throughout this whole thing. In fact, all you do is lie. All you fucking do is lie.
Referring to hell. See, fire and brimstone. Another one is Jude. Go to the book of Jude. Notice when Sodom and Gomorrah was burned to the ground, it was burned with hell fire. It wasn't burned with just fire out of heaven, some simple fire out of heaven. No, this kind of fire is not simple. It's eternal fire. It's hellfire. Look at Jude 7. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them.
You haven't even started to prove that it was hellfire that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. And don't give me any Bible verses, because Bible verses don't prove a damn thing. Evidence, dude. Evidence. Evidence. Give me evidence. And you have not given any evidence.
in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth an example, suffering the vengeance of what kind of fire? Eternal fire. All right, go to Mark 9 now. Mark 9. So there's no doubt it was burned with hellfire. So then,
Okay, so hellfire's eternal. So there should be no question whatsoever where Sodom and Gomorrah are. Because if Sodom and Gomorrah were burned with eternal fire, they should still be on fire. Wait a minute. That puts the lie to you right there, Gene Kim. Moving on.
then number 3, why is that the case? And I will temporarily move aside here, that way the people can see the writing. So number 3, it's because the Bible says it was actually burned with hellfire. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, the Bible also says don't wear two fabrics together. By the way, nice suit.
It's going to be cut off here. So it was no doubt burned with eternal fire. Now think about it. If it's burned up with eternal fire, shouldn't it be burning everlasting still over there? So why is it not burning still? Meaning, it makes a lot of sense. How do you get the rain from the volcanic activity? Something erupts below as well. The below is cracking up. You know what's going on? Hell is splitting open. So when hell is splitting open,
No. Where the hell did you get that? I'm not a volcanologist, but as far as I know, a volcano erupts because pressure's been building over a long period of time. Now, that's just my understanding. I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm not a volcanologist. If you know why volcanoes erupt, please put it in the comments. But to my understanding, that's the simplistic view of it. Pressure builds up over a long period of time, and that's why the volcanoes erupt. Hey, Satan's little helper, how's it going?
you see the lava down there, and then also the volcanoes and all that kind of stuff pouring out, spurting out fire out of heaven. So then you can guess what happened. Sodom and Gomorrah sunk down to hell. Now think about this. Where was Sodom and Gomorrah located? You remember? I showed you at Genesis 14. I'm not going to show you again. The Dead Sea. So then all you have to do is think about the Dead Sea here. That's the 4th reason why it would make a lot of sense that Sodom and Gomorrah sunk down to hell.
Okay, dude. Again, you really, really, really need to take a logic class. Hey, Wist. This doesn't prove anything. You're just finding a bunch of shit in the Bible and pulling it together and hoping it proves something to your sheeple. Well, it might prove something to your sheeple, but it doesn't prove anything to us. Evidence, dude. Evidence. I'm perfectly willing to concede to you that Sodom and Gomorrah may have been destroyed by a volcanic eruption. But you have a long way to go to prove that volcanic eruptions are due to hellfire. Oh, that's a fun one, Satan. Satan's little helper, that's a fun one. Don't get me started on that one.
Why? Because you get what they say about the Dead Sea, one of the lowest elevation areas, right? How do you get that? Unless there was some kind of sinking, maybe. Unless the Lord did something there to create it that low.
Really? Um, excuse me. Haven't you heard of cenotes? You know, or sinkholes? They go a lot further than the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is just the lowest place on Earth that we can go to. The cenotes and the sinkholes, they're far too dangerous. Well, not the cenotes. They're pretty stable, but the sinkholes are. Um, what? I think I'm starking out, people. Can anybody make sense of what he just said? I'm sure you did, Satan's little helper. Moving on.
So look at Mark chapter 9. Mark chapter 9. Mark chapter 9. We're going to look at Mark 9. I just only want.
So basically, you're telling us that the only quote unquote evidence you have is Bible verses. Bible verses aren't evidence, dude. But let's see what you got so I can tear a hole in that too.
Want it on the whiteboard. That's it. If I have to move, then I'll move. Okay, just let me know. We're going to look at Mark 9. Now remember, Lot's wife was turned into a what? Pillar of salt. Is that correct? Now look what the Bible says at Mark 9. So it ain't just a simple pillar of salt, you have to understand. This is actually salted with fire, hellfire itself. Look at Mark 9 and then verse 49. The Bible says, verse 48, where their worm dieth not and the fire is not quenched. That's hell, right? If you still doubt that, then all you have to do is look at verse 47. It says hellfire, okay?
Dude, it's a stretch even for you to say Satan's little helper, can you hear me? Hey, Firebrand. Can you hear me? Wisp says she can't hear me. Can you hear me? Wisp, check the sound. Check your computer, Wisp. And you can hear him too, right? Satan's little helper. All right, moving on. Wisp, I think it's your computer. Check your settings.
Then look at verse 49. For everyone shall be what? Salted with fire, and every sacrifice shall be salted with salt. How about that? So notice right.
This is what you call reaching, folks. Okay, thank you, Satan's little helper. This is what you call reaching. And boy, is he ever reaching.
Here, that this all makes sense. That's why the Dead Sea, we see all that salt activity. So all of this ties together, that this makes a lot of sense, that Sodom and Gomorrah, yes, I believe, is sunk down to hell.
Salt has activity? Wow, I didn't know that. But if you're talking about snowfalls of salt, that has a very naturalistic explanation because the cooler waters that are down in the depths of the ocean of the Dead Sea, the cooler waters there cannot be as saturated as the warmer waters above, which is exactly why you see snowfalls of salt. Come on, dude. It's not rocket science.
When we look at all the scriptures. Not only that, if you look at the archaeological evidences, it will weigh that, it will point that out as well. Let's go to Genesis.
I love it when he says, why do you people use evidences anyway? But I love it when he says, you check the archaeological evidences, it'll point that out as well. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, I can usually translate nonsense, but I cannot translate this nonsense. What the fuck is he talking about? Firebrand, unfortunately, he is. But I think it's in theology, so it's not a very good doctorate, huh? But at least he does have a genuine doctorate. Oh, he also believes in UFOs, which I gotta say is at least better than this stuff because UFOs might exist, you know? Anyway, moving on.
Genesis 19. Genesis 9. Luke, one more passage is Luke.
Sorry about that. Hang on. No, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Really, really. Grace through faith, and that's all you need. I remember James saying something about faith without works is dead. And then you've got plenty of other places in the Bible that say faith is backed up with works. So, yeah. You got to read your Bible. I mean, your Bible. You got to read your Bible. So, anyway, I think that's where I'm going to end it. He's just talking in circles. And this is basically Gene Kim in a nutshell. He just talks in circles. So, anyway, have a nice night. And I will see you guys later. I did an earlier live stream, so catch that if you want. Not Gene Kim, but who is that on? Oh, it was Satanism and Witchcraft. So if you want more of me, you can catch that and catch all my other videos. And, if you can afford to, please become a member of my channel. You can become a member for as low as 99 cents a month. You get early access to debunks, and you get custom emojis. And I will see you guys later. Bye.